This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. Happy Halloween, and welcome to my video looking at if the Insomniac Spider-Man could survive and change the events of Arkham Knight. I was going to usually have this come out a few weeks ago, but when I finished recording this the first time, which is everything besides this intro, I realized this video was like 30 minutes long, and I didn't have the time to edit it that week. So I decided to push it off to Halloween since Arkham Knight does take place on Halloween, and that'd be fun to do that. This will also serve as my 400 subscriber special. So let's go straight into it. And with this one, as I did for the Arkham City video, I'm going to quickly go through the campaign and just say any boss fights or any regular encounters that they may have trouble with. And for this one, after that, I'm going to go through how they could change the story. And the only thing they should even have any problems with is going up against the tanks. And I think it is possible for them to use the anti-venom suit for Peter and Miles' Venom Blast to destroy them. And even if they're going up against the Cobra tanks, I think they can find their way around it. Most likely using spider bots to go and sabotage them, or maybe even just go into the exhaust ports to cause them to explode. Now, looking at the most difficult thing they'd probably have to face, that would be the Cloudburst tank, because everything else should be relatively simple, or they have a workaround for it. And that will be difficult, but possible since they're agile enough to dodge its fire and should be able to go and sabotage the systems through many different ways. Either Venom Blasts, Anti-Venom Blasts, or maybe even using Spider Bots. But while every boss fight is possible for them to beat, I sadly have to say it is completely impossible for them to complete the events of Arkham Knight because they could beat every combat encounter, every boss fight, even if they had to fight Joker in their minds to retake control. It is completely impossible because of the Cloudburst fight, but not for the reason you think. Not because the tank is going to be a difficult obstacle. I said it is possible for them to beat it. It's the fact that there's a cloud of fear gas and it's made to go through everything. So the anti-venom suit and Miles's normal suit will not protect them from the fear toxin, making it completely impossible for them to go up against the Cloudburst tank. So yeah, honestly, while technically they could beat every boss in this game and get through every encounter, I have to say it's impossible for them to survive the events of Arkham Knight solely due to the fact that they have nothing to resist the fear gas and don't have any kind of vehicle to go in that the Nimbus cell could power to keep them safe. That could also go up against the Cloudburst tank. But besides that, it is totally possible for them to beat it. So now looking at the story, I think it's kind of obvious that we have to go to the fact that they need to prevent the Cloudburst or the Ace Chemicals plant from going up. And if they can't, then it's basically impossible for them to win. So let's take a look if there's a realistic scenario for them to do that. Looking at the story, they wanted to do everything exactly the same as Batman, up to at least the Ace Chemicals plant. And that's really because that's a set story where it's pretty linear. There's no real way for them to move around, use their different experiences, different abilities, or the fact that there's two of them to change much. they have to go and do these different investigations, and they'll eventually get to Ace Chemicals, which is a place both Spider-Man would work to secure. And they could go a little more unique with this, where the fact that there's two of them and there's basically two main sections where Ace workers will be held. They could split up and go after them that way. So it doesn't really matter which one goes which way, but both of them should have no problem dealing with anything there since it would all be the same as the campaign. They'll just be happening at a relatively the same time. We'll say that Peter goes for the hostage that is being held behind the glass where the Arkham Knight directly ambushes him, and Miles goes after the who he thinks is four hostages, but ultimately winds up being one since three of them have already been killed. Then Miles, when exiting, is ambushed by the Arkham Knight's helicopter. He is then joined by Peter. They move the scientists to safety, and the two should have no problem taking it out. After dropping the final scientist off to Gordon, they continue on to the main mixing chamber of Ace Chemicals, where they easily take out the militia stationed there. They then go to confront Crane, where he will have the ultimately the same threat as he does in the main game, where he has MJ kidnapped and uses that to be able to escape. Now, as a side note, we're going to say that the Arkham Knight is still Jason Todd, and since we'll have to change his backstory a little bit, we're going to say that he was an ally of Peter, and Peter thought that he was killed by the Joker, and that he's going to use that knowledge to take down Peter and Miles for replacing him as an ally. Obviously, that's changing a little bit, but we need to wait for the Arkham Knight's personal vendetta to work into this. And I'm obviously going to change stuff around like that because there's also some very personal vendettas in the Spider-Man games. So I'll obviously have to change some stories around like that. Now, at this point, while they would want to take down Crane, they realize that they can't go and risk MJ's life, so both Peter and Miles will stand down and give Crane the chance to escape. But while they do that, they'll be able to go and reduce the blast radius of Ace down to be small enough so it isn't going to cover Gotham in a cloud of fear gas, or the rest of basically the East Coast, which is what Crane had planned. Even if they do get the Joker hallucinations, which it's another complication in this, and there's no way they'd both get them. So I'm going to cut the Joker part out of the story because that makes things a little too overly complicated for figuring it out. And I think they can both overcome it since both were able to overcome Venom trying to corrupt them, with Peter pulling out of it, and then the one time where Miles was pulled into the hive mind but managed to get himself out before he was consumed by a symbiote. So both are possible, and it just puts in too many complications since they both can't be suffering from it. And if one was not, then they'd be able to make a lot more easy decisions since there's two of them. So, just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to say that neither of them was infected by the Joker virus, which is something I brought up in my version of them being in Arkham City because they do have their spider sense, which would help them avoid the old fake Joker gag. So, going through this, we're going to be avoiding them having the Joker blood infection, as I said, but we'll be keeping the other Joker infected. And continuing through it, they will be then going immediately to try and save MJ and track her down. Just to put them on a basically same path where they'll be going from different angles, but both trying to find MJ. And this is where we have our big change, where they go to the stag airships. One will go and trying to take care of each airship. So Peter will be dealing with all the. Let's say he's dealing with everything on the first airship, and Miles goes to the second one. And now that they have split up, they're able to cut out a major amount of time since they each need to clear a different airship. That pushes them to be able to go after Crane faster. And since Miles is going to the second airship, he's the one who will be going after Scarecrow. Now, since the two Scarecrow thing was never fully explained, I'm just going to assume that it was a trick set up by Scarecrow, although it easily could have been a fear gas or Joker hallucination. But since Scarecrow was so quick to go and attack them, I would assume it was a trap. And in this scenario, Miles will be able to use his webs to go and grab both and pull them towards him, and use that to knock them out temporarily so he could go and destroy the Cloudburst with a Venom Blast. And while he's focusing on that, Crane will have just enough time to escape with the Arkham Knight and go to execute his contingency plan. And as I said, he's doing a contingency plan, and this is leaving us an interesting point where things are going to be changing significantly since the City of Fear never happens in this. And that was, well, one, there's complete possibility for them to be able to beat Crane now. And we do have to take a look at how things would change because, as I said, City of Fear would have never happened. The militia is still at some pretty powerful strength. And this is the point in the story where Scarecrow executes Barbara, but I think he's going to change that plan now since everything has been ruined. And just as a side note, we know that a lot of other villains are making their plays at this time. For example, we know that slightly after this, Henry Adams will be letting Harley Quinn into free the Joker infected so he can go in to take them out. And there are other villains from the Most Wanted missions springing up throughout the city. And looking at Scarecrow, is that it's going to be a little more complicated to figure out exactly what he would do. But I think the simplest solution is to say that he would go with his exact same end game that he did in the end of Arkham Knight, with him forcing in that to make Batman give himself up to save an ally, and he'll be using MJ instead of Robin or an equivalent to him since he already have her captive, and there's no real point for him to go and try and trick Peter and Miles into thinking she is dead, mainly since there's two of them and that fear gas trick is only going to work on one of them since Miles would be able to see through the illusion since you can't really make people see something with fear gas. And Scarecrow just kind of got lucky there. I think that definitely needs to be explained how he knew that, but he was probably listening to Batman's comms or listening to security cameras in there to know that he thinks that Barbara is dead. Now, going to this thing is, I think that we're going to get the exact same scenario where he's going to want to make Peter and Miles give themselves up. I also don't think he would go on the attack on GCPD because ultimately that just served as a distraction to have Batman be pulled away from Panessa Studios so he could capture Robin. I think it would be smarter for him to keep all of his forces to help keep him and the Knight and Deathstroke more secure in Arkham Asylum. And just for the sake of letting the others be able to complete the other side missions. We're going to say that he gives them the exact same option he gives Batman for essentially the same storytelling reason that we want to give a chance to beat all the side missions before you get to the main end of the game. And with that, they're going to have the choice of when to turn themselves in. And Scarecrow's reasoning for that will be the same as in the main game, where he wants Batman to show how afraid he is to turn himself in, and it also gives him a chance to gloat and try and make Batman look like a coward, or in this case, Spider-Man look like a coward for not coming to turn himself in yet. And just just to help keep the surprise of the ending, and since I said it's really possible for them to beat it, they'll be able to go and complete every side mission plus everything from the main story that sort of acts as a side mission, like the entire thing with the Joker infected, since that makes no progression in the story against Scarecrow, and things are going to go essentially the same. It really won't matter what order they take down the Jokers in, but they will all be killed by Henry Adams. And the only change here is Henry wouldn't kill himself, since in this we know that I'm not having either Peter or Miles be infected by Jokers, so he wouldn't see that as the ultimate joke. They would take him down, and ultimately he would become the new Joker and a threat for them to deal with later on in the story. But that's ultimately not gonna really matter, because I'm not gonna make some sequel where Henry becomes the Joker fully, so it's just gonna be like a little fact, but nothing's gonna go ahead with it since it will never be fully relevant. Now, going back to the militia, after they've completed every side mission, the only one we could potentially say they can't complete, really depending on how the events of the night go, is Deacon Blackfire. And that'd only be if they go and complete all those other side missions and they haven't reached the point of the night where Ryder leaves and gets kidnapped. And since it's so late into the night, and I'm not going into an exact timeline, since so much of the story has been cut out, I won't be able to tell exactly if they would have enough time after completing all these other side missions to go and even know about Ryder being captured. And since it's not something they would know about in advance, since obviously if they did, they'd be able to prevent it, then I'm going to just say that there is a chance, but just for argument's sake, we'll say that Riddler's what takes up enough time for them to be able to go and save Ryder, since they would have to deal with that, and for that we'll just say Black Cat is the stand-in for Catwoman in this. But yeah, honestly, it ultimately doesn't matter too much. It's just them wanting to have Gotham be as secure as possible before they turn themselves in. The only boss fight and side mission that won't be fully completed is the one where you take down Deathstroke, and the reason for that is going to be Deathstroke being one of the militia commanders, and them still having a centralized plan with the Knight still there will be staying behind with both the Knight and Scarecrow. And that's solely for the reason so we don't have to have that really stupid tank battle in this version of the story. Plus, it would also help a little bit for the end game setup I have. Now, Peter and Miles will turn themselves in, and we'll reach the point where they're brought to Arkham Asylum. There will be a lot more militia there, since the Spider-Man would not have taken on anyone from the main militia after the airship battle, and the only ones that he would have taken out were the ones that were stationed at the different checkpoints and watchtowers. And with those, we'll say 100% completion is everything that was set up at that point, since Scarecrow's going to consolidate resources now to make sure he has as many people as possible to hold these Spider-Men in and humiliate them for his final act of revenge. And since the Knight is there, and there's also the fact that they don't need someone to remove the Spider-Man's masks, since it doesn't have the mechanisms and safeguards built in that Batman's did, MJ will be held in a different room with militia guards in order to fire on her if the Spider-Man try to escape. And with that, it's going to be a little more intense here, since they will know that they can't escape without MJ dying, and they'll have both Deathstroke and the Knight to deal with as physical threats, plus the fear gas from Scarecrow. He will then go to remove their masks, and that will be the ultimate goal of him, to destroy their reputation. Once they're unmasked, he'll realize that there are just nobodies, some 20-year-old guy and a teenager. He'll be using that to basically say, look, they are just no ones, because this isn't going to be as impactful to everyone as saying that Batman is Bruce Wayne. In fact, there is very little chance that any of them there, really besides Jason, would recognize them. And we'll just say that Jason tells Scarecrow what their names are, just to kind of push it in and complete their humiliation so he could go and kill them. But this is where we have the ultimate differing in opinions and the most interesting part in the story, because here I think Crane is going to do the exact same thing. He's going to want to let them go so they could see how the legacy and reputation of Spider-Man has now failed, while the Knight is going to want to kill them. So we now get one small question I want to just give a reasoning on. Deathstroke is going to have to pick a side in this, and I think he would side with the Knight. The Knight is a guaranteed chance for more opportunities, and he is the leader of the militia. Scarecrow is just a client, and he's already been paid for this. And especially if Jason goes and kills Scarecrow, Deathstroke will go and side with the Knight and wouldn't try to take him down for killing Scarecrow, since he's already been fully paid and is a mercenary. So in this case, we're going to say, because honestly, I don't think that Jason is going to want this to happen. He's going to kill Scarecrow before he can go any more with their humiliation and hitting them with fear gas. And from this point, we're going to have a pretty devastating point in the story. And this is going to be the hard choice that the Spider-Man are going to have to make. If they are killed, then the city's going to be left with no protector, and it'll be creating an ultimate danger, but they also don't want MJ to be killed. Peter is going to be fully willing to go and make that sacrifice for MJ, but being able to think with less of an emotional attachment to it, but he'll still have one. Miles will have to make the hard decision, and he will break free to go and stop the Knight and Deathstroke, and Peter will begin to beg him not to. Miles will apologize and says that the world needs Spider-Man, and with this, he'll break free. The Knight will order for MJ to be killed. They will not be able to prevent it because she'll be held in a different room, and Peter will go into a complete blind rage at this point. He'll use the anti-venom suit to break out, and he'll go on a brutal rampage throughout the militia and will take on both Deathstroke and the Knight, being able to take down both once he realizes who the Knight is. he's going to want to kill him, and the only thing that's going to stop Peter from killing him is the fact that Miles is there and that the broadcast would still be running, since ultimately it's not going to stop, and it will be showing Peter being willing to go and kill the Knight, wanting revenge for the love of his life being killed. Miles will point out that Spider-Man doesn't kill and everyone knows who he is now, so he'll just be making his life even more complicated. Peter will want to do it and not care, but Miles would be able to push him back and slap some sense into him. Now we're gonna have to just look at just how much more complicated things are going to be in this situation. The Deathstroke and Knight have been defeated, but ultimately Scarecrow has won. He not only destroyed the image of Spider-Man, but he also destroyed the bond between Peter and Miles, because I genuinely do not believe that Peter would ever trust Miles again and would never even want to see his face again. And he'll tell him even to give up the Spider-Man identity because he doesn't think he is worthy of it. He doesn't understand the true values of it. And Miles will just have to take on a different identity, since Peter was the first Spider-Man. We could also see alternatively Peter just retiring from being Spider-Man and just being done after all the people he has lost, and he will just tell Miles he's done, and if he thinks he'd be such a better Spider-Man, he could do it. Because there's just really no way Peter's going to make it out of this doing well, and he'll be extraordinarily angry at Miles, probably for the rest of his life. So, yeah, honestly, what do you think about this? Because, I mean, this is the best case scenario I came up with. One where they do defeat the villains, but I don't think their identities would be exposed, and in this scenario, I think that Scarecrow almost certainly would be killed, and the only way for them to win is for MJ to be killed by the militia and Miles to have to make that choice, because Peter wouldn't be able to make that choice. He would fully be willing to give his life. And yeah, honestly, this is, yeah, an extremely dark ending, but it's really the only logical way I can see this going out. But yeah, honestly, do you think I'm kind of crazy with this, or do you think that I'm on the right track? Because honestly, this was such a interesting story to go through. I mean, this was all me just thinking of the moments and what they would do. But yeah, honestly, it is pretty interesting. And this is already at like 30 minutes, so I'll take a look at the other DLC based missions in a different video. But yeah, I'm gonna, as I said, do that in a different video because I don't want to be making this even longer than it already is. And with that, I'm also going to toss in just a different concept with it, since those will all be just shorter looks at DLCs that usually take like 5-10 minutes to complete. I'll exclude the Harley Quinn and Catwoman ones, since those are them doing more illegal and morally questionable activities. So I don't really make too much sense for those, but I'll look at those. And then on a fun older side, including with that, I'll see if the Suicide Squad is capable of killing these two Spider-Men. And then also, completely forgot about this because I don't have the console, and I sort of forgot that it was coming out for a little bit. But I will also do one for Arkham Shadow after I've fully watched the campaign and I'm able to kind of think through that. because all these other games I've played at least twice, and the only one it applies to for twice is Spider-Man 2, since that's only been out for a year. But since Arkham Shadow is a brand new release that, as of this video, has been out for basically a week, and as I'm recording this kind of final section, because I completely forgot about it until the game released and I started editing this, I did want to mention it here. So I might do some of the ones on the opposite side first, but still, I am looking forward to watching that campaign as of the point of recording it. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but, and also based on the votes, I will definitely be doing a review of that campaign just from um, watching a no commentary playthrough. But yeah, honestly, that'll just be something I will do, but it may take a little more time for that one specifically, so I could take a look at what Batman does in that and changes. And yeah, honestly, all I really have to say about that specifically. So let's continue on to what I've already recorded way before I remembered this fact. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about this. What do you think about it? Do you think I'm right, or do you think that I went a little too far? But just let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.